I'm your facilitator, Roland Bockhorst. You're most welcome here at Sky Island Unitarian Universalist Church. Wherever you're from, whoever you love, whoever you voted for, you're welcome here anyway. So if you're a new visitor, or a second-time visitor, or a third-time visitor, feel free to stand up and introduce yourself to us. Any takers?
We have a visitor. Please stand, daughter.
So you've been...
This is my youngest daughter in whom I'm well pleased. Her name is Christine.
So this is Becky's daughter.
She lives in Florida.
Welcome.
Welcome anyway.
Welcome
Yeah,
everyone else too.
welcome.
Now, we're going to turn the camera on and you can stand up and wave to the people on Zoom, if you will, if you feel like it. Hello, y'all. I don't know how many of you there are, but you're welcome too. Now, let's all turn our cell phones off, okay?
Oh, yes.
That's a, you know, if you leave it on and it rings, you have to buy donuts next week. Okay, we took care of that. Now we have some announcements here now. I go first, okay. Please turn in your emergency cards. Okay, you can put them on the wall, this wall and that room in the community room. We want to be able to contact your loved ones in case something untoward happens. The other thing is, there's a sign-up sheet for Thanksgiving dinner to be held here on Thanksgiving at 2 p.m. Please let us know if you're coming so we can order the meat. That's from Trish Girdette. And here's the sign-up sheet. And it'll be on the table on this wall in the community room. After this, we have other announcements. Okay. This is for today. We will be carpooling from church to Ramsey Canyon at 1 o'clock to see the fall color. If you have time to get a quick lunch and return to the church. Parking is very limited. We will shuttle from Brown Canyon if needed. See Molly if you have any questions. If you would like to receive the newsletter, please ask Deborah Smith or Becky Tanner. There's Deborah Smith and Becky. There's Becky Tanner and Deborah Smith. Any more announcements?
Yes, we have a couple. One is once again, my office hours are not on Tuesday. People like to schedule meetings without asking me. But they will be like 10 to 12 on Wednesday. If you need to, and reach out to me, text me, email me, call me if you want to set up an appointment so you don't have to wait. And we also have an announcement for from someone from our safety team. Ken?
Just turn it on.
Yes, it's on.
Yeah, we're trying to get back together a safety team to make sure everybody stays safe. And things kind of fell through the cracks over the last couple of years with the pandemic and so forth. One of the first things we want to try to do is start having some evacuation drills. And we're planning on having one 2 weeks from today on the 26th and letting you know ahead of time so that everybody's prepared for it. And the biggest thing I want you to keep in mind is that where all the exits are in this building. We have 6 doors that lead in and out of this building. 4 are on the front side. We have the 2 here in the sanctuary, and 1 off our meeting room out here, and 1 with the glass doors where most people come and go. We also have 2 emergency exits on the back side of our building. One is through Tina's office. You see the exit sign there. That's Tina's office. You'll go through, and there's an exit door. There's a ramp going down to the gravel area behind. And there's also an exit door on the far corner of this building out of our little library, conference room, where you want to call that, back there, next to the religious education room. the biggest thing to remember in an emergency, I think, is you want to get away from the threat as quickly as possible. And it kind of depends on what the threat is as to what you want to do. And if we were to have a fire, head for the closest exit and get the heck out of here. You know, get as far away from the building as you can. Fire, gas leak, something that's a threat with the building itself. Now, the other thing that we worry about, and we all watch the news, we know what the world's like these days, would be an intruder that shows up wanting to cause havoc or do harm to the congregation. And that is probably the thing we worry about the most. As far as I know, we haven't received any threats or anything, but you never know. And if that were the case, and if someone showed up at the front door wanting to get in here while we were having our service, we would not want to exit out the front of this building where the intruder was. We would want to exit out the back and get away from that person, and that's where these emergency exits out the back door would come in. And we would, let you know what the threat is if we ask you to evacuate. So in the case that something like that were to happen, we'd tell you to exit out the back, go down the ramp, go across the area behind the building, between the buildings next door here and out into that parking area on the other side, get as far away as possible. The other possibility would be that some of the folks in here may not be able to be as ambulatory as others. If you're on a walker, crutches, wheelchair, something like that, getting out through there, down that ramp, across the gravel, in a timely manner may not be an option. And what we're thinking at this time is that we would designate the storage room right next to Tina's office as a safe room. And if you don't think you can get out in a timely manner, we would suggest going in there, locking and barricading the door, turn out the lights so there's no light shining under there. We don't want somebody knowing you're in there, and wait out until it's all clear. But what I'd like for everybody to do is, after the service today, refamiliarize yourself with the evacuation routes and maybe formulate a plan in your mind. If you feel like you need a little extra time, you may want to sit toward the emergency exit just to give yourself that little extra edge. We hope we never have to, do any of this stuff, but we need to be prepared just in case. So again, we're planning on having a practice on the 26th, and we'll remind you again next week about this. Thank you.
The reason we've picked the storage room is I used to think this was great. Maybe no one would know this bathroom is here. The wall is sheetrock. That wall is an outside wall for the storage room. So it makes more sense, but you'd want to go all the way back to the left. That wall, we could play with that too.
We're going to rearrange those rooms.
Yes, so that people can actually go, and we'll put in some chairs, and I will be with you if I'm in the building, obviously, so, yeah. Does that make sense? Clear as mud? We get to confuse you again next week and then do it the week after. And the one announcement I didn't hear you make is that at 1 o'clock today, we have 3 free thinkers, right?
That's right.
And Roland is in charge of that.
Let me check my schedule here. I haven't done this in about 10 years. And the trouble is, there's been such a high bar set. Right? Okay. The words from Reverend Dr. Michael R. Lellock, a UU minister who retired in 2018.
So our words are, may we look with gratitude upon this day for the beauty of the world, for the first radiance of dawn, for the last smoldering glow of sunset. Let us be thankful for physical joys, for hills to climb, hard work to do, for music that lifts our hearts in one breath, for the hand clasp of a friend, and for the gracious loveliness of children who remind us of the wonders of life. May,
May we be appreciative, above all, for the concern and love of those around us, for the exceeding bliss of the touch of the holy, which suddenly awakens our drowsy souls to the blessed awareness of the divine within us and within others. For all of this and for the countless other blessings we have received in our lives, let us be grateful. Joys and sorrows is next. Do we have a list of joys and sorrows? Feel free to.
we do. We have a person coming up to read. In honor today, yesterday was Veterans Day, Armistice Day. I see Mary in a poppy, which throughout Europe, but especially in England, we wear to remember those who died in World War I, especially. I have 3 great uncles who survived and a step-grandfather who did as well, but they were all in World War I. We all have veterans here. Who among us is a veteran? Raise your hand. Thank you. We do not know all the sacrifice that took. We do not know that, so we thank you. We know that it was a hard duty, and we thank you for that. And we have a poem that Jeannie Landwehr is going to read to us.
As Tina said, this is in honor of Veterans Day. The author uses the word valle in the title and later in the poem, which is Latin for farewell. Valle from Carthage, spring 1944, by Peter Varick. I now at Carthage, he shot dead at Rome. Shipmates last May, and what if one of us, I asked last May in fun and gentleness, wears doom like dungarees and doesn't know? He laughed. Not see Times Square again? The foam feathered across that deck a year ago swept those 5 words like seeds beyond the sea into the future where they grew like trees. And as he passed them there next spring, they laid upon his road of fire their sudden shade. Though he had always scraped his mess kit pure, scrubbed redeemingly his barracks floor, and all his buttons glowed their ritual hymn like cloudless moons to intercede for him, no furlough fluttered from the sky. He will not see Times Square. He will not see times change. At Carthage, while my friend living those words at Rome screamed in the end, I saw an ancient Roman's tomb and read, Valle, farewell, in stone. Here 2 wars mix their dead. Roman, my shipmate's dream walks hand in hand with yours tonight. New York, Rome, like widowed sisters bearing water home on tired heads through hot Tunisian sand in good, cool urns, and says, I understand. Roman, you'll see your Forum Square no more. What's left but this to say of any war?
Thank you, Jean. I'm going to put a few stones in the water to celebrate spoken and unspoken sorrows and joys. The sermon title is Gratitude and Unexpected Gifts. The sharing of a meal is in the spirit of a sharing community we enjoy, as well as gratitude for all the goodness that comes our way. We're indeed grateful for that gratitude, which contributes to our mental health. Gratitude and charity really contribute to our mental health.
So I'm starting to talk, obviously, a little bit about gratitude. I picked that story because I really do think gratitude, which is our theme for the Baja 4 this month, it really is powerful. I know that it's a watchword right now. I know many of you have probably heard it ad nauseum, and maybe you have been told, practice gratitude daily. It will really help you. I found an article that tells at least 10 ways it can help you. One of them is that it actually changes your brain. A part of your brain lights up, and if it keeps lighting up, if you keep practicing it, that part of your brain actually getting used helps the rest of your body relax, and it helps your endorphins feel better. It can reduce stress. It promotes long-lasting happiness, partly because if you're good to be around, like Mina started to be, other people might want to be around you, and then you might start reaching out to other people, right? And it improves our sleep. How many people lie at night with racing thoughts? Did you know that we have anywhere from 12,000 to 50,000 thoughts a day, and 80% are negative? So if you try to think of more positive ones, you might sleep better. You might feel better. It also helps us to live mindfully. So if you start looking for beauty, or you start noticing details, or you start noticing things that bring you pleasure, you also are more mindful in the moment, and you stop the racing thoughts and all that. It helps your immune system. It helps your self-esteem. People who practice gratitude are more likely to exercise and eat right. Okay, so enough of all that. Eat your spinach. It's good for you. Have some gratitude. It's great for you, and everyone else in your life will thank you. But I'm not suggesting that gratitude and cheerfulness are the only ways forward in the world, the only way will make this world better. Obviously, feeling grief and feeling sorrow are important. I'm not telling you to buck up and cheer up and get a grip. I'm just saying actual deep body-centered gratitude is helpful. And I'll give you the example in my own life. When I was 15, I'm sure I've told you this story before, I had my first niece. By the time I was 20, I wanted my own children. Do you know how long I had to wait? Till I was 40. I got a lot of practice with my nieces and nephews. They are dear to me. But for many years, I wanted to finish seminary. It took me 10 instead of 3. For many years, I wanted to meet the right person. I didn't meet him till I was 35. And so I really wanted and I agonized. And everyone around me was getting married and having children and getting the job, the work they wanted. And when I was 33, I went to visit my sister. She was posted to Australia. And she had 2 beautiful sons, a very successful and nice husband. And I should have put a sorrow and joy. He survived an appendectomy yesterday. So, and she had a job she loved with the Foreign Service. And here I was on the long road through seminary, working odd jobs, getting all this weird experience, no right person in my life, not married, no children. So instead of looking for a silver lining, I did look at it differently one day. In the middle of her kitchen one day in Australia, I turned my head around and I sat in the sadness and I thought, but what is this offering me? What if all this that I don't have is actually giving me something? And I kind of pouted some more, like Mina, and I kind of wondered and I grumbled, and all these people had things. And then I realized, first world problem I had. Because I wasn't married, because I didn't have a good, stable, fulfilling ministry job yet, because I didn't have children, I could go visit her for 2 months, reclaim the summer I'd lost years before when I moved there and moved back. And years later, when I had the wonderful husband and the ministry job and the children, I couldn't visit her in Turkey. I couldn't visit her other places she lived. So that moment was huge in my life, actually. I just realized sometimes the thing that bothers us the most can actually give us something, can open space. So it's so funny because I rarely ask a question, but I'm asking you this question today about gratitude. Maybe you are just happy people and gratitude has worked for you, and please let us know. Has gratitude worked for you? 2, are you kind of grumpy like I am, and you've been surprised to find you're grateful about something? So are there gifts that have arrived in your life unexpectedly, or have you found gratitude really unexpectedly and not really wanting to acknowledge it? So if you have an answer to that question, we have someone with a handheld mic. Richard Spencer will come.
So this is what it's like to be on a Phil Donahue show.
Yes. Anyone have a surprising gift or gratitude they want to share? Howard.
Howard.
I'll make it good. Friends. Unexpected friends. Just made me feel good.
I try and look on the bright side of things. Mostly because when I was a kid, it pissed my mother off.
Ooh. We could sing my favorite hymn, Always Look on the Bright Side of Life, right?
Hello, I am very gracious to have known Martha Montevello, who was 101 at her passing. She was an Army veteran during World War II. Her obituary was in Friday's newspaper, and I knew Martha, and I have a lot of gratitude to have known her. She traveled the world. She was a hostel manager, amongst other things, and during the World War II, she was in the U.S. Army, and she was a chauffeur and a truck driver. So she had quite a history, and I just have a lot of gratitude to have known her, and to have known her for maybe 15 years or more.
So I guess I'm thankful for, you mentioned grumpiness earlier, and I think that I'm realizing my dad's passed away a while back, but I think I'm seeing things the way he saw them when I was young. I believe that I'm turning into the man I despised as a youth.
And Richard, that's okay, right?
I just want to express my gratitude for the past, almost 2 years here now as a member, meeting so many fantastic, wonderful people and doing so many things with all of you. Thank you very much.
Chris took mine. I was going to say that since we moved here 4 years ago, this has been our whole social circle, and you just don't know how much I appreciate it.
I don't know y'all, but I have great gratitude for my mom and my dad, especially my daddy. Well, my mama too, but I don't play favorites. But I have great gratitude in my heart for my daddy because he chose to love me. He chose me. And that means a lot to me. My mama had no choice. Yeah.
And
She ruined my Thanksgiving dinner.
I bless you.
By being born then, in case you can't guess. Oh, I love you all because you make me cry.
Anybody else?
Last year was pretty tough for me, and when I took my trip, I found out how many friends I really did have. Even though I had not seen some for over 40 years, I felt I was really blessed. I just didn't realize how blessed.
¿Quién más?
Well, before I go to the reading, you know me. I can take no? I can take the last word. I was talking about my brother-in-law, Ross Wilson. He married my sister. It will be 40 years this coming summer. And he's a very quiet, stoic Minnesotan. It's hard to get to know him. But after 40 years, I can see he would take his vacation and paint his parents' house. He would retire as an ambassador, and he would drive across the country to bring me all my mother's junk. He would show up. When a good friend had gone away, he'd be the one to come up and hug me. So I think sometimes it's those grumpy people you don't expect to like, who show up again and again in your life. You know, if you have someone get sick in your family, sometimes it's not your best friends. It's someone you don't expect who's been through it, who shows up at your door and walks with you. So here's my gratitude is for those humans who keep showing up. Bless you. I love that hope that Reverend Julian embodies and calls us to. It is okay to grieve. Grief often feels more real, but it's also good to remember that moon does come back after it's disappeared. That hope can happen, and we have to make it happen. We cannot, it is no longer okay to act as if our care isn't going to make a difference, right? We are all needed for our communities and for our world. And in this section about gratitude, I want to say to you, and I'm grateful for this week, and I'm grateful for surprises I encountered on the way. So from Monday through Thursday, I was up in Tucson with Border Links, an organization that takes people to the border, not just to show them what's going on, but it did. We talked to a Mexican man who's been working there for decades. We talked with a young Mexican man who works with the Sierra Club Borderlands about what's happening because of the wall in the borderlands. And we spoke with another woman who turned out to be someone I had met before. But part of Border Links is not just that you go to the border and you're horrified by it. And I've been to that border many times. I expected nothing, but I hadn't looked at the new layers of barbs that are coiled into it now. The extra layer of mesh. A few years ago, we had a communion at the wall, the United Church of Christ, and we could hand each other crosses through the wall. You can't hand anything through anymore. And on Tuesday, when we went down there, we saw a family on either side meeting a new baby. You can still talk through the wall. You can still look at a new baby, but you can't touch it or kiss it. The layers of that wall and how it's growing up are pretty impressive in a pretty horrifying way. So yes, you do these things, but then you also reflect with Border Links about your own internal barriers, your own reaction, your own hopes, your own how you've been changed, how you intend to grow. And the third day we spent in Tucson, hiking around to a park and walking by beautiful old buildings in the old barrio. And suddenly, Jamili Omar, our intern, said, Tina, look, that's El Minuto. You can go to the, El Minuto is a restaurant where the Baja for ministers, not just the ones in churches, but the ones in the community, the ones doing hospice. Once a month we meet there because it's easy to get to, the food is good and cheap, and it was right there. I'd been staying in that neighborhood for 2 days and hadn't realized El Minuto was right there. And the next construction next to it, if you show the first slide, is called El Tiradito. It's a shrine in Tucson. And on one side, there's a mural of the border and the mountains. But then this, in between the restaurant and the front wall, is a Dia de Muertos altar, right? And this is, on November 1st, they put up these votives to the 186 people who have died this year crossing. So this is a reminder that I should have seen and yet walked by for years. This was a strange kind of gift to wake me up and to remind me we live in this world that's so easy to walk by and not see. And the next slide, right next to that, we sat on the wall and we spoke with a woman whose name is Dora Rodriguez. And she spoke of 1980. She lived in El Salvador. She was 19. And things were getting dangerous in El Salvador for her and for other people. She risked being beaten or worse because she was a youth leader. So she fled El Salvador and came into this country. And in organ pipe, she finally made it into the US. She thought, okay, great. She didn't know it can take 10 days of wandering sometimes to get where they were going. Some of the people she walked with had high heels on. It was 110 at night and they couldn't lie down. They didn't have enough water. And so one day she just lay down under a tree and couldn't get up. When she woke up, she was in the arms of Border Patrol. And they were saying to her, don't fall asleep, stay with me, don't fall asleep, stay with me. And she did. And so the picture behind her went on the national news, and the sanctuary movement in Tucson was starting then, but she was one of the first people helped by the sanctuary movement. And instead of leaving here, she stayed. That border made an impression on her. She stayed, and she's helped put water in the desert, and she's helped other people who have come into this country. Her organizations will not give money that ends up in the hands of coyotes. They only help people who are kind of in the right place, either back into Mexico or here with asylum. It's a tricky process, right? But just to help the human beings who have faced this. And the next slide, what I didn't know is as I'm listening to her story, I'm thinking, boy, it sounds familiar. She stayed in the borderlands. She stayed here. Oh, and then she talked about a day in September of 2020 where she went to Sasabe, and she went to the wall and she talked to people. And I thought, oh yes, Molly and Becky and Lola and Pip. And if you see the next slide, you can see I was there and you can see Ken was there. We were all there at the wall. And the next slide, we were making a kind of protest we'd been invited to do because the wall was going across organ pipe and hurting some important Tohono sites, sacred sites, and dividing communities here, and hurting the organ pipe monument a bit further on. So there's Molly. We were all there. Well, the story keeps going. That day, Dora says, I talked to these people, and then I went into Sasabe, Sonora, and I saw hundreds of people in the streets. And I discovered that the Border Patrol was leaving people there, about 150 a day, taking them back into Mexico and just leaving them. And of course, Sasabe, Sonora was overwhelmed. She said she saw a young man off by himself. He looked dejected, he looked dehydrated, he looked hungry. So she sat down with him and she asked him where he was from. He was from El Salvador. What town? He was from her hometown. And she said it was like a sign. I have to do something for these people being dropped off in Sasabe. So she went to the mayor of the town. She got his permission. She started something called La Casa de Esperanza. And from 2020 until now, they have fed people and helped people when they've been brought back into Mexico. They've helped migrants. Unfortunately, recently, 2 cartels are now fighting over the town. It's not safe. They can't hold their house there right now. It's on pause. And she was able to get 1 nurse out by basically sitting at the border with her until a representative helped her. There's so many more people, of course, she'd like to help. But for me, it was a similar echo. The fact that I ran into her again, the fact we recognized each other, that I remembered her, that she tells that story over and over again, and that she is doing this work with love, with care. And she told us, share my story, so I am. That for me is a huge, huge gratitude. I carry gratitude for guilt. I've talked to you about shame and guilt, and how Brene Brown says shame is when you feel badly as a person. You've done badly and you beat up on yourself and you know you're a creep. Guilt is when you feel strong enough, you can notice your behavior. You're not a bad person, but maybe you could have acted better. Maybe in the almost 18 years I've lived here, I could have done more about this wall, right? In reaction and help. Maybe. And I have to admit something I learned this week. When you are tired, when your heart has been broken open, when you've been walking a lot up and down hills, the distinction between shame and guilt blurs. They call it white fragility, but I think sometimes it's just, oh my Lord, I'm a horrible human and I can't beat on myself anymore, and I'm in a corner crying in a disgusting, ugly cry way. And that's okay, as long as as humans we keep showing up. So yeah, the last slide, Christopher. This is something that I was given, of course, by Border Links, to think about the different types of responses one could make to the wall, to other types of social justice that might influence you. Obviously, as a church, we have done direct action. We fed people at the border, right? We've done things. Philanthropy, we have given money to a shelter in Nogales and many other ways. Issues education, we talk about these things to each other, and how many people actually are brave enough and close enough to other people to express a difference of opinion in this polarized world about how you see the world should be. How often? I do it like once a decade maybe, but I do it. Yeah. Issues. Witness, Dora is an amazing witness, and she also does direct action, and she also does legislative advocacy. Sometimes we call and we write. Sometimes we take electoral action and vote in the people we want, right? And community organizing, which is really forming connections with people, and direct actions. I have yet to chain myself to the wall, but I might. With the next slide, Christopher, you'll recognize a person that you see on your right is Janine Gelsinger. Right now, she's one of the executive directors of UU Justice Arizona. She will be leaving in January. We're looking for a new person. But her mantra is, find your partners. Work with your partners. Don't try to do this alone. Once a month, I eat with a progressive pastors group. Once in 2019, we did something together. We had a bunch of youth working together, and then COVID hit. It's hard to build up partners, but it's really important to do. There's so many ways we can be involved. I know we can do direct actions. We can help feed people, quite literally. There's so much more we can do. Most of all, I invite you to think and feel deeply, to think about the borders inside you, to think about the parts of you that feel broken and separate from others, and to think about the ways you could heal so that we can work with, alongside other people to do that as well. We're encouraged to be not helpers, but allies, to walk alongside. And then not just allies, but maybe sometimes accomplices. So I'm grateful for this week. I'm grateful for the people who keep showing up. And I know I will continue to tell you more as I sift through it about that time. I'm also grateful for each one of you here, because each one of you has shown up as human beings and will continue to. And will push yourselves not into shame, maybe just a little bit of guilt, to imagine and envision and act out that world you want to see. Ren Manning, who is one of the directors of Border Links, wears a shirt that says, "No borders." And there's a picture of the border, and there's a picture without the border. Now, some of us might not be there yet, but what do you want to see in your world? And really, really imagine it, and be grateful for it as if it's already here. Thank you.
The closing words by Reverend Sarah York. As we leave this worship and put out our chalice, may you feel the love of this community, and it stays with you, never extinguished. Hear these words from Reverend Sierra York, author, spiritual director, and retired Unitarian Universalist minister, who, after 30 years of serving churches, retired to the family farm near Asheville, North Carolina, and became a certified spiritual director. The introduction lasts longer than the quote. She says, "We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown."
See if I can do it. I was impatient.
Please remain seated for the postlude.
Well, actually, yeah.
Thank you. Go in peace.